first story is by Anywhere 584. I worked as a police officer. I was told that someone named Jack Dather died after falling off the Tyne Bridge. A kid in the area saw it go down, and his mother was the one who reported it. I was asked to talk to the kid to confirm if it was a self-unaliving or an accident. I believe they said his name was Milo, and I was bored of always being stuck giving out speeding tickets, so I jumped at the opportunity to do something different. When I arrived, the room was cold and empty. The only thing inside was an old desk, me and Milo sitting on the other side. I slowly sat down and said, "My name is Jacob, and I'm here to ask you some questions." Milo didn't seem to notice me. His face was completely empty, and any sense of emotion was hollow. He had short hair, he had emerald green eyes, but the lighting made them look grey. He was short. I was told he was 12, but his height made him look 8. After a moment to clear my voice, I softly said, "Hey, they say your name is Milo. I'm here to ask you some questions about what happened today at the bridge." Milo turned to look at me. He was completely expressionless. His eyes blinked very slowly. He stood completely still. He was nothing like what his colourful red and orange t-shirt would suggest. There was no way to tell if anything was going through his mind other than static. He was as silent as a dead mouse. He barely moved. He just stood there. He just looked off into nothing, and after no response I said, "Don't worry, you're not in trouble. I just want to ask you about what happened to Jack." He again said nothing in response, just his cold, lifeless face tilting towards me. I waved my hand toward him and slowly said, "Is everything alright, Marlo? Are you okay? Do you not feel comfortable talking about what happened today?" He finally broke his silence and began to slowly nod at me. I nodded back, and when I looked back, he didn't stop, he just kept doing it. It was slow, almost alien how lifelessly his body moved. After nearly a minute of him nodding back and forth, he said, "Okay, what do you want?" I softly said in response, "When and where did you see Jack?" For a few seconds I saw his face finally have an expression. There was a sense of fear in his eyes. Marlo then looked down toward the ground and he quietly said, "I was just playing a game and I saw Jack pass by." I waved my hand at him and began once again. "Was the game near the Tyne Bridge? How close were you to the bridge when the accident happened?" He said in an even quieter voice, "Yes, I was playing on the bridge. I was there. I saw it happen." I looked at him solemnly and a frown slowly covered my face as I spoke. "I'm sorry you had to see that. It's such a shame someone so young had to see something so horrific." His hands started shaking the second I stopped speaking. His hands went from completely still to moving at ungodly speed in just a few seconds. His eyes were twitching. He looked like he was about to have a panic attack. I reached into my pocket and quickly pulled out my phone and said, "This is going to be over soon. Your mum would not let you have to do this if it wasn't safe. Everything will go back to normal while I'm done asking you questions. If you feel unsafe, I can call your parents." "Don't. I'm fine answering your questions. Just don't call my parents. I don't want them to know," he immediately said. "Your parents already know about our conversation. Your mum was the one who reported Jack's body." Milo froze. He stopped blinking. It was hard to tell if he was breathing. "You aren't in trouble, I just really need some questions answered. Your mum contacted us about you. She said she wants us to talk to you about what happened today. Are you fine answering my questions?" His face turned to anger when his mother was mentioned. He nodded in return as I finished speaking. His hands briefly turned into fists before returning to normal. He was clearly trying to hide his frustration. I was about to ask him about it, but I stopped and just stuck to what I was supposed to talk about. What was Jack doing when you saw him? Marlowe responded instantly. This time he didn't hide his anger. His eyes were burning with anger. He was being a jerk. How? Marlowe didn't wait another second before saying, he tried to beat me up. He did that all the time when I was alone at the park. His hands slowly moved into fists. He looked as if he was ready to punch someone before switching back to his empty state. I nodded at him and said, how long was that before he jumped? How long was he doing that kind of thing? His expression was still empty, but his voice was strangely happy, even excited. Years. He did that to me for years. He was about to do it again before he fell. I looked back concerned and said, what was the last thing Jack did before he jumped? Did anything seem off to you? Milo looked back as a smile slowly began to tear open his expressionless face. He started shaking his legs under the table, not nervously but joyfully. He then said in a clear, calm voice, he tried to punch me before he fell off. My concern only grew as I slowly and nervously said, did he slip or jump off? Did Jack die after he tripped trying to punch you? He looked back at me. His face went to an impression of his previously emotional, empty state. He then slowly said, can we move on to the next question? I don't like this one. What else do you want to know? His hands began to shake again. His legs were still shaking under the table, but this time nervously. I slapped my hand on the table, and as I pulled my hand back I said, this time louder, did he slip or jump off the bridge? Everything about the look on Marlon's face changed as I waved my hand. He stared off at the wall like I was not there. His face somehow looked less lifeless than usual, but still terrified. He looked scared. I quickly said as I saw him start to stand up, ready to scream, hello, I'm sorry for raising my voice. I just really need to find out what happened to Jack. We need to confirm his cause of death. Can you please just answer my questions? He slowly, nervously said, no, you don't. I stared at him with horror growing in my eyes. Why? He didn't flinch an inch as he spoke. You don't want to know. It's better if you never know. What happened at the bridge? I shouted. He said nothing in response other than no. I said, what happened at the bridge? Milo looked at me and spoke in a quiet, horrified voice. I didn't mean for Emily to die. I just wanted her to stop. A smile crossed his face when he said stop. I heard about Emily before she went missing a few months ago. I blankly said, I asked about Jack, not Emily. What did you do? Milo looked at me, his hands were violently shaking, and he said, she fell off too. I shouted, you said you didn't mean for Emily to die. How could she have fallen off if you said it was an accident on your part? Did you push them off? Milo coldly said, it was an accident on her part. It was all her. Did you really think I would believe that happened twice? Your story does not line up. You're telling me you saw two people fall off a bridge on two separate occasions? You didn't report it the first time. Your mother reported it the second time, after she saw him fall across the park, and it was not your fault despite claiming it was an accident. Milo said in return, when I said accident, I was talking about her. She accidentally tripped. They both died because of their mistakes. It was all them. He slammed his hand on the desk when he said their mistakes. I didn't argue in response. Instead, I looked off to the doors. I said, I'm leaving. I'm telling someone about this. Milo almost immediately ran in front of the door and coldly said, you don't want to tell anyone about our conversation. I looked down at him. He looked angry, his small hands in fists. He had his mouth open, ready to scream. I then told him, move. He didn't. Instead, he just screamed. I screamed back at him. This whole conversation is being recorded. Just calm down or... The door opened, and who walked through was one of my co-workers. He said, they found another body below the bridge. "We think it's Emily." I said nothing, I just stared at Marlo. Marlo then said, "It was their mistake. They all had it coming. I did nothing wrong. I would do it all again if I could." And that's when I realised that Marlo was not a normal kid. He was a cold-blooded killer. The second story is by Salty Haley. Around 10 p.m, I heard someone come upstairs. Around 11 p.m, Mum saying she hears someone in the toilet making noises. We don't know who's in the bathroom, but we go downstairs, where the family lived, and her husband comes upstairs and enters the toilet. He comes out and tells us she's okay. He went back downstairs. She was not okay. Me and my mum went to sit down, but then the snoring stopped and I saw a shadow at the bottom of the door. It was a horrifying sight. And then we woke my dad up, who managed to wedge his way into the bathroom and get her out. The ambulance arrived. I saw her lifeless body laying in the hallway. And they were doing CPR and shocking her back to life. My dad says they shocked her about 6 times until she got a heartbeat. I was mostly outside trying to calm my mum down, and we all went to the hospital. Her husband, her 2 kids, my dad, me and my brother. I remember we got to the hospital. She was hooked up onto all these machines and pipes with blood coming out of her. They took her off life support the next day at 4 p.m. The house felt cold and dark after that. I was so scared I didn't want to walk on the carpet where her body was laying. I didn't want to use that toilet or be in my room. I moved all my stuff to the lounge and just used the toilet outside the house. And then one day, not too long after she died, I was home from school, sick. I remember I was in the lounge when I heard a door slam followed by footsteps coming up the stairs. And we had this little wooden gate at the top of the stairs. I heard it open and shut, so I assumed one of the other kids was also home. I realised now that I never heard the footsteps go back down, but I went on with my day. At the end of the day, when I saw all the kids walking down our driveway, I was horrified to realise I was the only one home. And I heard the footsteps and door slam around 10 a.m. She used to wake up around 10 a.m. when she was alive. Another time when I was in my own room, in pain, my fairy lights were flickering and they weren't even plugged in. My mum told me that was her just checking on me, letting me know she was there. I felt guilty because I was a difficult teenager, so we didn't really get along, and I felt jealous when my mum was always spending time with her when we all moved in together. Or even before that, when we would go to their house. We used to smell her perfume sometimes in various places. One time we went shopping and I kept smelling her perfume in different shops. I told my mum and she said, "No, she's dead." Then her eyes widened and she told me the second she said she's dead, she suddenly smelt her perfume. And when we moved out of that house 10 months after she died, I smelt her perfume on my blankets when we packed the car. I feel so guilty too because even though she had a brain aneurysm causing her to die, I wonder if we didn't listen to her husband and call the paramedics sooner, would she have lived? She was dead for 40 minutes before she was revived, so she never stood a chance. I'm not judging her husband, but why would he tell us she was okay when she wasn't? We first discovered her when she was still snoring and he was in there with her while she was snoring. What was he doing in there? The whole time he was quiet at the hospital. I'm not judging him or suspecting him of anything. Everyone grieves differently, but yeah, I feel the way I do about it. This third story, the author has asked to remain anonymous. I think this is the right place for this, but while listening to Creepcast I remembered this story. and figured it wouldn't hurt to post it. Around 2 years ago, I was laying in bed, all my cats cuddling up with me, and the door open in case the cats wanted to leave, or one of our dogs wanted to come in. I was home alone for once, so I wasn't worried about my sisters coming past my room to annoy me. The way the house is set up, my door opens into a small hallway area with my sister's room directly across the hall and a bathroom to the right. I was watching a video on my phone when I heard a small pitter-patter approaching my door. Assuming it was my dog, I sit up, getting ready to lift him onto my bed if he wanted to join, since his back wouldn't allow him to jump up. The footsteps stopped right around the corner, out of view of my door. Then, completely out of nowhere, and without any sound, I see a roughly child-shaped, toddler-sized shadow thing run past the doorway into my sister's room and jump onto the bed without any noise coming from the springs. I freeze up, and for a solid 20 minutes I'm just very, very slowly reaching for a cross on my bedside table, since I didn't know what else to do. It took me 2 hours of sitting there, trying not to panic, before family came back and I was able to move again and close my door. I told them what happened, but after they checked, nothing was on the cameras and it didn't pick up the walking sounds I heard clear as day before. I know it wasn't just a weird shadow or something with the sun. The shadowy thing was too dark. It was a solid shape just without any noticeable features. I moved on, and after a few weeks of sleeping with the Bible and a cross over my door, and 3 months after this, I had another encounter. This time I was in our living room watching TV. And to clarify, before I say what happened, the way the living room was set up was a couch against the wall, of course, and a decent sized TV on the opposite wall. Behind the TV is a chimney for the fireplace under it. The room behind the couch is the garage. The wall to the right goes directly into my room, and the wall to the left is a large window to the front yard. So while watching TV, I suddenly heard knocking. Loud knocking, but not hard. It sounded like a normal knock on the door if you were right next to it. But the knock came from dead centre of the 4 walls all at once. I heard no overlap, but I could feel it in my skull. It had come from 4 different places. This was of course scary as hell, since 2 of the places shouldn't be able to even make sound close to knocking on a wooden door, and one was where I sleep. I acted like I didn't hear anything and waited a few minutes before walking over to my mum's room and asking her if she heard the knocking, since her room was in the corner next to 2 of the places. She said she hadn't, and she told me I probably just imagined it. But it was far too vivid and set off that feeling you get when someone's at the door. At this point, I assumed there was a ghost in our house, since it was a bit old and figured we'd just have to live with it. 2 weeks after the knocking, I was in the kitchen making myself a microwave burrito. My phone was charging and I was just going to wait the 2 minutes in silence. Out of nowhere, I hear a giggle so loud it's noticeable over the normal microwave sounds. At this point, I was used to these weird things and wasn't as scared, but something about it was weird. I heard it like it was a kid giggling over a game in the other room, but there's no buffer. No echo that any video or talking in that room would normally have, so this made me pause more out of confusion. The giggle sounded like it was going straight through the brick of the chimney and into my skull, before getting cut off right before the giggle starts to die down. I moved on and haven't had another situation like that in a while now, but I still remember it so vividly. I'm not expecting anyone to believe this, blah blah blah, you know the thing, but it happened. It didn't end with an exorcism, I'm not cursed, and I moved on. I still find it an interesting story though. The next story is by Datsik. In 2012, I was working as the lead diagnostics technician at an automotive shop in Fremont. It was a typical day and my shift started at 7 AM sharp. I parked across the street and walked into the shop to greet my boss when my phone rang. The call brought devastating news. My grandfather had just passed away in the hospital. Overwhelmed, I quickly said hi and bye to my boss and headed straight home. Days earlier, strange events began unfolding. It was a Saturday, and my dad and I were working at our house. Throughout the day, peculiar things happened. One incident involved a garage light that repeatedly turned itself on, even after we made certain it was switched off. We would leave the garage only to return and find the light inexplicably lit again. Later that same day, my dad received mysterious text messages from an unknown number with a 209 area code. The message urgently read, "Mi jefe está muy malo, you need to come now." Alarmed, we quickly packed up and headed to pick up my sister, and then all drove together to Mentica in my parents' Honda Civic. During the drive, my dad received additional messages, including one that asked, "Are you getting my messages?" My dad replied, "Yes." Upon our arrival, we discovered that none of my uncles had sent those texts, and none had recently changed their phone numbers. Days later at the hospital, my sister went through my dad's phone to find the conversation had inexplicably vanished. My dad never deleted messages. After my grandfather's passing, my family gathered at my grandmother's house in Mantisa, where the atmosphere was heavy with grief. Hours later, my dad suggested we head back home to prepare a room for my grandma to stay with us. Agreeing, my sister, my girlfriend at the time, and I got into my sister's 2012 Honda Civic. My sister drove, and I sat in front of the passenger seat, and my girlfriend sat behind my sister. My parents followed closely behind in their own Civic. As we drove down a quiet street, I noticed a rosary hanging from my sister's rear-view mirror, knotted tightly. I casually asked her, "Why do you tie the rosary in such a tight knot?" And she said, "I don't like it dangling too low when I drive." Not thinking much of it, I returned to scrolling through my phone. We approached a red light, preparing to turn left onto the freeway, and suddenly my sister screamed. I barely had time to look up from my phone before blinding headlights filled my vision. An oncoming Volkswagen, travelling at nearly 60 miles an hour, swerved into our lane, barrelling head-on towards our stationary car. The impact was immediate and fierce. My parents, who witnessed everything from behind, later recounted how the collision was so intense it lifted our car's rear wheels off the ground and threw us completely out of our lane. Inside the car, everything turned smoky and my ears rang painfully. A giant check engine light blinked furiously on the dashboard. In the stunned silence following the crash, I opened my eyes and saw 3 rosary beads resting in my lap. My heart sank and I thought to myself, "Oh no, Stephanie's rosary broke." My memory at this point becomes hazy, but I distinctly recall a woman dressed entirely in white scrubs, like a nurse, opening my passenger door and calmly instructing us to move quickly to safety across the street. According to my parents, however, there was no woman in white. We simply walked across the street on our own. Shaken and injured, my family frantically checked each other for injuries. I had a fractured sternum, my sister suffered 2 broken heels, and my girlfriend had internal bruising. But despite the severity of the crash, we had survived. As we stood waiting for the ambulance, my mother's eyes narrowed. Curiously, she pointed to my back pocket. "What's that sticking out of your pocket?" she asked. Confused, I reached behind me, feeling something solid. Carefully, I pulled it out and my heart skipped a beat. In my hand was my sister's rosary, completely intact. The very same rosary I'd seen tied tightly to the rearview mirror. The same one I thought had shattered moments earlier. Somehow, impossibly, it had ended up safely tucked into my back pocket. And to this day, none of us can explain how that happened. Nor did we ever see the woman in white again, but deep down, I believe someone or something was watching over us that day. This next story is by Medelia 1. I just wanted to start by saying I've had many experiences of paranormal encounters, sleep paralysis and so on. I will write about the other experiences in future, but I just wanted to focus on one in particular now. I want to discuss the area in which I live first and give a bit of background. The area that I live was built on marshland. There has been a village here for a very long time, but the area I wish to speak of is newer. A foreign shoemaker found this area and decided to build on it around 1930s. He decided to build a shoe factory and a town surrounding it for his workers. The town was amazing and had everything you could think of. Houses matching the style from the country that he was from. Swimming pools, shops, cinema, petrol station, tennis courts, village hall and a big hotel. All of these were owned by the same man. But over the years the factory shut down, buildings were sold and the area was developed. But I want to discuss the hotel in particular. The hotel was converted into flats, and this is where my story begins. 16 years ago, when I was 17, I moved in with my then boyfriend, who was 22 at the time. We moved into the old hotel. He was incredibly controlling and abusive. Our relationship was very toxic and chaotic. When I was younger, my grandfather had also lived in the old hotel, which will be relevant in a bit. Now, the way these flats were laid out was the following. You could walk in through the front door. Straight ahead was the door to the bedroom. The bedroom was huge and was in a rectangular shape. The length of the bedroom was around between 17 to 30 feet. To the right of the hallway was the living room with an open plan kitchen, and to the left was the bathroom. The bathroom was towards the centre of the building, not the outer walls, so they do not have any windows. In my grandfather's flat, it would feel like you were being watched constantly. I was always confused by this, as the bathroom was a 6x6 room with no windows, and there was nowhere for someone to watch you. When I moved into the flat with my then boyfriend, I noted it was the same floor my grandfather had lived. I started to notice that familiar sense of being watched in the bedroom. This continued for months, and I did my best to ignore it. Not much really happened, just the feeling of being watched, and that you were never truly alone there. One day, my younger brother came to visit me, a 16-year-old male. I had been in the bathroom, and I got that familiar sense of being watched, and I left the bathroom and grabbed the laundry hamper to collect the laundry from the bedroom to wash. I walked into my bedroom to where my brother was standing with his back to me. I began chatting to him about whatever I found interesting at that point. And my brother had on his pale yellow super dry t-shirt and his black Adidas tracksuit bottoms with the elasticated ankles. As I was talking to him, he began turning round to look at me. I could see the side of his face as I heard something from the living room. He was talking. I listened again and I heard my younger brother's voice. I stood confused, looking at my brother. My brother's voice said loudly, "Who are you talking to?" And as I turned to my bedroom door, I saw him walking out of the living room. I looked back to where my brother had been standing and was no longer there. I looked back to my brother at the door and I said, "You were just in there with me." He was very confused and said that he'd been in the living room and heard me talking. I started to think he had managed to walk around me or something without me noticing until I looked at his clothes. He was wearing a completely different outfit. I finished the washing and put the laundry hamper on top of his big oak wardrobe we had in the bedroom. Later I told my boyfriend what I had seen. He laughed at me and told me it was in my head. Without skipping a beat or even thinking, I blurted out, "Well, it will show you." I don't know where that came from, but that night both me and my boyfriend woke up and sat bolt upright. Neither of us knew why. As soon as we both sat up, the hamper from the top of the wardrobe flew across the 17 to 20 foot length of the room and hit the wall on the other side. Calmly, I looked at my boyfriend and said, "I told you it would make itself known." He sat with his mouth wide open in shock as I laid calmly back down and went to sleep. Not long after we moved out, we then broke up shortly after. I never understood my experience until I started seeing posts about mimics. The thing is, I never felt like it wanted to harm me, but was more on my side regarding the boyfriend. However, regarding how mimics take the shape of someone you trust to lure you has freaked me out. What do you guys think this experience was? This next story is by Mr. Gas Mask. So this happened a few years ago, and it still messes with me. I don't usually post this kind of stuff, but I need to get it out somewhere. I was over at my neighbour's one summer night. She's an older gypsy woman who everyone on the street likes. Really sweet, always bringing over food or just sitting and talking. A couple of us were chilling in her kitchen, drinking tea and swapping stories. It was one of those slow evenings where nothing happens until we heard music. Not from a phone or a radio, it sounded live. Drums, a violin, people singing. Distant but close enough to make the hairs on my arms stand up. My neighbour went quiet for a second, looked at the door and said, "Don't go out." I thought she was being dramatic. I was wrong. We looked toward the backyard. There's this open lot behind her house. Nothing there usually. In the moonlight there was a low haze like mist, and in that haze were figures moving. At first I thought it was kids playing a prank. Then I realised they weren't quite right. Semi-transparent, like smoke shaped into people. Some of them looked like they were missing limbs. Others just floated slightly above the ground. One looked like it had no head, but it still kind of swayed to the beat. In the centre there were two more solid looking silhouettes. A man in a suit and a woman in a white dress, standing like a couple. The rest circled them, keeping time with the music. They didn't look angry, just there. The whole scene felt wrong and calm at the same time. My neighbour murmured, "It's their wedding again." She told us to stay inside, that they wouldn't come into the house while she had people there. I remember thinking, okay, whatever that means. She's seen weird stuff before. That made it sound ordinary, which is the weirdest part. Two of the people with us didn't buy it. One of them laughed and said, "It's probably someone messing around with speakers." The other said he wanted to go check it out. My neighbour begged them not to. "Please don't," she said, her voice shaking. They shrugged and left anyway. We watched from the window. They crossed the yard. The music sort of stopped for a beat, then the figures all turned and drifted toward them. The fog closed around those two for a second, just a second, and when it cleared, they were gone. No screams, no fight, nothing. One moment they were there, the next they just weren't. We ran out, no footprints, no sign. The police did searches, nothing turned up. Now it's been years, no trace. My neighbour still lives there and says sometimes, on certain nights, she hears the drums again. She says if she looks out, she sees more faces in the circle, new ones. She says she's seen my friends there, smiling like they always do in photos, but empty. I don't know what happened, spirits, hallucination, something else. I don't have answers. All I know is that after that night, I stopped being the kind of person who thinks ghost stories are just stories. So if you ever hear distant music at night and there is a fog hanging low, don't be clever. Stay inside. This next story is by Your Favourite Plant. When I was a teenager, me and my mum had to make the big move from Montana back to where we are now, close to family. She had decided to split from my stepdad due to personal reasons between the two of them, and it was all so sudden that my mum couldn't really find a place for us to stay quick enough. Luckily though, my dad had decided to let her take the camper with her, so we could at least sleep in that rather than have nothing. We packed everything we could into that camper, and he said once we had somewhere, he would help bring the rest of our stuff to us. My mum ended up finding an RV camp living space to rent back home while she tried to find a house for us to live and find a new job. But when that fell through, her brother had decided to let her set up camp outside next to his house while she began building her life back up. Her sister was also staying at my uncle's house because of her own issues as well. Her house flooded and she needed somewhere to stay while her family got everything fixed up. So it was me, my aunt, my mum and my cousins all staying at the house. My uncle wasn't home due to him working. He was a truck driver and he was gone a lot. Except for the fact me and my mum were luckily sleeping outside the house in our camper. Through my aunt and cousins, I slowly started learning the horror of the house itself. It was a one-story house with the exception of the basement having 2 rooms downstairs. But my aunt had moved my cousins that used to sleep down there back upstairs due to reasons I don't really know, but anyway. My aunt told me things that had happened to her in that house. Her Siri would activate at weird times, and she would joke about her Siri hating her with this weird stuff it would say. Her husband would have weird night terrors about a woman standing over the bed looking at them. My cousins all had different experiences as well. They eventually left once the house was fixed, leaving me and my mum there alone. But we're here to talk about my experience. It all started off slowly, with things that could be explained and stuff I could talk myself down and make logic out of it. Like sometimes when I would sleep on the couch or take a nap inside the house, things would just randomly appear around me when I woke up. One time I had woken up to a black hat laying on my chest, which was weird because I don't own one and I didn't remember it being anywhere when I laid down. My mum started hearing tapping outside the camper, and especially weird things coming from the woodshed that was behind our camper. This is important for later, so remember this. But then things started to get weirder really, really fast. So I hated being in the bathroom. It sounds weird, but I really hated being inside it. Our camper didn't have any water hookups because we were just camping in my uncle's yard, so I had to shower in it and use the bathroom inside. Whenever I went in there, it always felt like something was wrong. I used to beg my mum to sit outside the bathroom or on the toilet while I showered because I I just didn't want to be alone in there. She always said no, so I used the alternative. The cat. I used to bring the cat into the bathroom with me while I showered because at least something would be with me. And if anything happened, maybe the cat would do something. It made sense at the time, I swear. But every single time, without fail, besides once, the cat had always disappeared from the bathroom and somehow ended up outside the bathroom. I still to this day have no idea how it kept getting out. It's obvious how, but how? The door always clicked shut, it wasn't janky, and there were no holes in the bathroom for the cat to crawl out of. On top of that, I'd always lock the door before I got in. So something would have to unlock the door, let the cat out, then lock the door again. When it happened the fourth time, I stopped going into that bathroom altogether. I stopped going inside the house, I just refused. I threw a big enough of a fit that my mum let me shower in the community centre, so I wouldn't have to do it there anymore. Now, the last and worst experience that I had at that house was when we were finally packing up and leaving. My mum family found a house that we could settle down in. While we were moving stuff around and making sure nothing in the camper would move around when she started driving, my mum handed me a plastic case of water bottles. She told me to place it somewhere inside because she didn't want to bring it with us. And I hadn't set foot inside since the last time I took a shower and started showering in the community centre. So I opened the door and set the water bottles inside the house, set it on the ground and slid it to the side. I wasn't even inside, I just leaned in and slid it in. And when I looked up to close the door, the bathroom light turned on. And at first I was like, oh, maybe someone left the light switch halfway turned off and it just decided now to flip up. But then, things started getting thrown around. I couldn't see directly in the bathroom, but I could hear things on the counter getting thrown to the ground and something or someone throwing themselves around. I felt my stomach drop and I froze completely. Then, the worst sound known to man, a scream. It was the most weirdest, inhuman scream, loud and low yet high-pitched all in one. It scared the absolute bejesus out of me. I slammed the door shut and ran to my mum, crying and yelling that someone was in the house. My mum told me to get inside the truck and just leave it. She rushed me and even yelled at me to just get in the truck. And as we were leaving, my mum looked at me and told me she saw my uncle's wife in the woodshed. That's the important part. My uncle's wife, my aunt, had unalived herself in that woodshed a really, really long time ago. I knew she passed away at some point, I just didn't know how or where. And when my mum told me, I told her what happened in the bathroom, and we just went silent on the drive over to our new house. She later called my uncle and told him what happened. She said she saw his wife waving at her like she was saying goodbye. That house still has things going on with it, I'm sure, since the house hasn't been sold since my uncle moved out of it. I've especially looked up the history of the property. There were at least 3 different house fires and rebuildings and 3 unalivings. One of them being my aunt. This next story is by Aaron the Ludwig. So my mum has an uncle that lives in Arkansas. Once or twice a year my family makes the 12-hour drive to his house and stays there for about a week. This has been a thing in my household for as long as I can remember. Well, this experience takes place at his house. I'm 20 now, and I would have been around 5 or 7-ish when this happened. That's important because I can't remember what happened very well. At this point, it's more like I can only remember myself remembering it, if that makes sense. For whatever reason, my mum and I were sleeping on the pull-out sofa bed and not in any of the 3 spare bedrooms her uncle has. My dad couldn't make it because of work, I presume. Anyway, here's when something happens. It's about 4 in the morning. It's very dark in the house, not a single light on. I'm laying flat on my back when all of a sudden I see something slowly move into my field of vision and look down at me. The thing has a decently long neck, a perfectly round head, and a pair of horns protruding from either side of its head. It was real. It would have been standing to my right. My mum was on my left, so I didn't find comfort in my mum being between me and this thing. The image above is a rough approximation created with Canva of what I remember it looking like, and yes, I know that the horns make it look like a stereotypical devil or demon. That's one thing that makes me think it may have been a nightmare. For a while, I thought that I had my eyes shut and somehow saw this thing through my eyelids, since I remember seeing a dark silhouette against a slightly less dark background. But as I'm typing this, I'm beginning to think that my eyes were open. Now, why would I be laying flat on my back with my eyes open at 4 in the morning? I don't know, especially considering that I sleep on my sides. This is one thing that makes me think it could have been a dream. That's not all though. If my memory is correct, it spoke. A simple hello. This is another thing that makes me think this may have been some kind of nightmare, that the voice sounded somewhat like the voice of Davy Jones in Pirates of the Caribbean. As a kid, I was terrified of Davy Jones. Being raised in a Christian household, I also had fear of the devil. And I found my great uncle's house to be very creepy due to it being very old people-y and mildly secluded. So there's a chance that all these fears merged into a single nightmare. One thing that may cast doubt on it being a nightmare though, is that I don't remember waking up. Once it slowly left my field of vision, I remember just laying there, on my back with my eyes shut tight, scared to death to move or try to wake up my mum for hours because I was worried that it may still be in the room with us. I remember laying in the same position for so long that it actually started to get really uncomfortable. It's important to note that this was only because of fear and not because of paralysis. I don't have sleep paralysis often, but I don't remember this experience being like it. Now that's all I can remember. I've never really had a paranormal experience, despite being a believer and finding the paranormal to be immensely interesting. This is the only exception. It's something I've wondered about a lot, and I hope this sub can help me understand what may have happened better. This next story is by Going Apeshit. This had occurred in September 2021. My best friend, business partner and roommate had passed away unknowingly in his room. I woke up at 5 AM to go to an NFL game with my father that we have season tickets for. While I was in the shower, I had this weird sensation to close the drapes as I was being watched. The bathroom at the time did not have any windows, and the vent was pretty much worthless. Nonetheless, I would typically leave the shower curtains cracked on both sides to alleviate the steam build-up in the actual shower. That day I had this urge to close it and had a subliminal type of conversation with my friend. After feeling a little uncomfortable, I was about to knock on his door, but something came over me and said, "He's fine. He's an adult, go and enjoy the day with my dad." Once I had gotten home, I'd noticed that there were several packages outside the door, which was very unlike him to leave any packages, sit for more than a few minutes. When I had gone to the kitchen, I noticed some of the chicken parm I had ordered the previous day was never eaten either. I just let it go, as he may not have been home. So about an hour or two had passed. I had been home and I did not hear anything, and received a text from his girlfriend at the time, and she said, "Have you seen or heard from Ben today?" The way she worded it, I had a quick flash of all the little signs that he was not or has not been downstairs at any point for the day. I ran upstairs and I already had seen what occurred prior to opening the door, and unfortunately I found him deceased and his bloodhound laying next to him. What really baffles me is a month and a half prior, I had a dream of him that he had passed away, and he was in bed, laying the width of the bed, and he was 6'4" tall and about 280 pounds. And I saw his dog next to him. I even told him about this vision, and that pretty much freaked him out, but finding him the exact same way that morning, and after having all those bizarre conscious conversation with him when I was in the shower, and the prevention of knocking on his door in the morning to go hang out with my dad is unexplainable. I wish I could say this was the only time something like this had occurred, but this has also occurred to one of my other best friends who is no longer with us either. With my other friend's passing, I did not have any vision of him passing, but I felt something totally not normal around the time he had taken his life, and woke up randomly at 2:30 a.m. while my phone ringer was off. And I noticed the room was lit up by my phone, and I had looked and seen that it was his mother calling me. That's when I first notified to him passing a few hours earlier. Has anyone else experienced anything similar at any point of their life? I know it's not my fault, but seeing these things and even events that had occurred after that have come true, I kind of feel guilty, like I could or should have done more. There's nothing you could have done, brother. This next video is by Dirty Dan 209. My family has our fair share of unexplainable encounters, from sightings, noises, objects being moved or altered, children in the family telling stories with details they couldn't possibly know. The list goes on. Cat Eyes is the name we gave the encounter I experienced. About 20 years ago, I was around 8 or 9 years old. My family and I, 2 parents and 2 younger siblings, lived in a 3-bedroom house with 2 living rooms. We called the second living room a family room. The design of the house was almost like a T shape, with the base of the T off centre. Once you walk in the front door, you enter the living room. From the doorway you can see straight down the hallway leading to all 3 bedrooms. As you walk towards the hallway, about 10 feet or so, you enter the kitchen on the left, which then leads to the family room. From the first living room, you can see the kitchen and family room. At this point in time, we didn't use the family room as much for lounging. We had a cloth rocking chair, and maybe a chair or 2 left in there from the kitchen. The encounter night, I was sleeping in the living room on the couch with my younger brother. Just a normal night, falling asleep to some cartoons. We fall asleep. In the middle of the night, I wake up and want a midnight drink of milk, as 99% of the time as a kid, I would wake up and get a drink of milk and then fall back asleep. I open my eyes, laying on my right side facing the TV in the living room. The TV is the only light in the house at this hour. I sit up. I look to my right where the kitchen is, about 8 feet away. I see the fridge. I could also see into the family room just past the kitchen. What I saw, I still think about to this day. Our cloth rocking chair was in the middle of the family room, facing to the right from my perspective. Sitting in the chair, sideways, with the right side of her body leaning against the back of the chair looking at me. She looked to be around 11 years old, in a black old-style school uniform with the long white socks and black shoes. Her skin was pale and gave off this aura of light that lit her up and the chair she was sitting on, but nothing else. Her hair, white and silver with bangs that came down similar to a bowl cut. Her mouth slightly open as if you have a stuffy nose and need to breathe out of your mouth. Her eyes, they are what gave this encounter the name. They were bigger than average human eyes, but not so big that it's cartoonish. They were not human eyes. They were large, yellowish, green, cat-like eyes. The pupils were black on both eyes and went vertical. We just looked at each other, her not moving. To this day, I don't know why I did what I did next. It must have been a comfort thing at the time of stress. I got up from the couch and slowly walked towards the fridge for a drink of milk, which is also walking towards this girl. After I took my first step towards the fridge, I noticed more figures alongside some audio. Behind the girl off to the left, I could see two blue see-through younger children passing a ball between them, and a third blue see-through child to the right, jumping jump rope. All three kids faded out from the knee down. All I could hear were the sounds of the playground, as if it was a playground full of kids. I continued towards the fridge, hugging the wall and inching my way. Cat eyes staring at me, not moving. The three kids playing and the playground noise still going. I make it to the fridge, which is out of sight of the family room where all this activity was. The second I open the fridge door, the playground sound stops. My vision seems to be more clear, but that could be due to the fridge light. I drink my milk as I convince myself I'm still half asleep and hallucinating. I put the milk back. The second the fridge door closes, the playground sounds come back louder. I peek around the corner into the family room. Cat eyes and the three children are still there. She's staring at me with no movement while the kids continue to play behind her. I walk backwards towards the couch I was sleeping on, never taking my eyes off her. I make it to the couch and curl up under the covers to hide and go back to sleep so it will all be over. I eventually fall back to sleep with nothing else happening that night. I don't remember how long it took me to tell my family what I saw. Eventually I just started telling everyone what I saw that night, and the name Cat Eyes stuck and still gets brought up to this day. And now I get to share it with you. Thanks for reading, and thanks for listening. This next video is by Gentleman 2015. Our old house that we had moved from 2 years ago, to this day, since the day we moved there in '89, was haunted, even though it was a new build. I suspected after doing research early on, with what little knowledge people had back then about the paranormal and parapsychology, that there was a possible portal in the house, because I would experience stuff on and off. Most time I could go long stretches with feeling or experiencing nothing, then randomly get a cold spot near no vents but never feel it again. Other times I would see outlines of people on our basement walls late at night. Then sometimes those would vanish, then weeks later be replaced by new ones. I had noticed some late nights there would be shadows moving around in the dark in the foyer by the front door, which I have a clear view from my door, and the intense feeling that they had noticed me, and I wouldn't go downstairs without all the lights being turned on. I'd have the foyer lights, the kitchen lights, dining room, living room, and family room. They all had to be on because I only felt watched from any dark rooms. Other nights, I would feel nothing and just walk down in the dark to get what I wanted before going back up. I have night terrors in that house, also waking up sometimes with bleeding scratches. Just a lot of strange things that I can't explain. Now, my two biggest moments was the one time back when I was comfortable enough to sleep with my door open. I heard a voice that sounded like my mum calling from somewhere downstairs. Now, hearing this, I bolted straight up in bed, having no idea if what I heard was real or just a dream. That's when I heard it again, and it sounded like it was from the basement. That's the night that made me never sleep with my door open and unlocked ever again. And another thing that happened only one time and never happened again was when I was absolutely and completely alone in the house. I was sitting on my bed, no radio, no TV on, anywhere in the house at all. I was reading Edgar Allan Poe, and I was very much absorbed into what I was reading, as I love Poe's writings. Yet I was pulled out of it by this very, very faint whispering voice that only said, "Hi," and nothing else. Now when I say faint, I mean just inside the human range that allows that sound to be picked up. Yet I hear it clear enough to hear that one lone word. Day to day, week to week, the energy in the house seemed to change so much. So sometimes when I was alone there would be nothing, and then other times I can hear small things and this one random loud bang sound coming from my parents' bedroom. And I would only hear it when I was home alone. When there was carpet up, it just sounded like a thud. But after they put in hardwood, it sounded like something brass was being dropped. I had checked once when the floor and carpet was on the floor and the hardwood and never found anything that fell anywhere in the room. At some point I would like to contact the new owners and just ask them if they've ever noticed, felt, saw or heard anything odd or strange in the house, and see if they would allow a paranormal investigation to happen. This final story is by Nate Dogger. I want to preface this by saying I'm not in the slightest bit superstitious, but, well, the past 2 weeks have got me reconsidering. I live in Texas, far southeast rural bumfuck nowhere Texas. My family owns over 50 acres, so you can imagine how much camping I do. I am 16 and male, and unexplainable things have been happening. A while back, me and some friends were walking through the woods, and the smell hits us first. It's over 100 degrees out here currently, so dead things stew in a matter of hours. A totally dismembered coyote, arms, legs and organs strewn about. You might argue it was a predator. Nothing out here could do this to a fully grown coyote. And it felt like the sound of the cicadas around us was damn near deafening, almost making the heat worse than it already was. I ushered my friends back inside and just kept assuring them it died of old age and vultures got to it a couple of hours prior. And a couple of nights later, it was trash day. We have to take a four-wheeler down the road where we put the trash. It's a decent 45 seconds windy path to the road if you were going at a decent speed. Now, of course, my bonehead brothers said they couldn't because they had work in the morning. It was 10 p.m. at night. So I said, alright, but begrudgingly agreed to do it. I'll load up the garbage and go through the path to the way to the road. Something just doesn't feel right. Like my forehead is sweating cold, but my cheeks are hot, and I just feel wrong. What I could only describe as dread. Like that dread you feel when you do something wrong and you have to go to your home to your dad, knowing that an arse beating is awaiting you. I shrug it off as, oh well, it's dark and I'm paranoid, whoop-de-doo, and keep going. But as I go, this feeling gets worse. I eventually make it to the cans and start tossing the trash that was on the back of my four-wheeler into the bin on the side of the road. Now this road spills out into a bigger one, with forests on each side behind me. I just stop dead in my tracks after I hear a weird croaking. But I have to almost crane my neck to look at it. I can tell I'm looking at whatever is just out of eyeshot, maybe 20 or 30 feet, and I'm frozen in fear. It's confusion, and that horrid smell bashes my nose box in, and I almost fall flat on my arse backwards. I stand there for a few more seconds before absolutely bucking it to the four-wheeler. My heels got blisters late that night, and that's how hard I hoofed it, those 60 foot away. I got on my four-wheeler and went maybe 45 to 50 mile an hour on those windy dirt roads back to my house. I could swear I heard stomping behind me, but I didn't look back. Or maybe it was just my heartbeat in my ears. But I could hear branches and pine straw crunching right behind me. But before I get to my house, barely park the four-wheeler and launch inside, locking the doors behind me, swearing like all hell. I did not sleep that night, and I could swear that dreadful feeling didn't leave until morning. Not a hoot of an owl or the sound of a singular cricket. All that rang out that whole night was a slow repetition of the Chuck Will's widow, which is a bird thought to be an omen of death. Look up the sound and you'll know what I mean. Does anyone out there have any idea what's going on? I'm scared to even set foot in those woods. Never make it so much as a peep anymore. It's just always so silent there now.